You know that feeling when you're hovering over the enroll now button at 2 a.m., heart racing, reading that promise, this one course will change your life? You're exhausted from your job, you're scrolling through Instagram, and suddenly there's this ad. Some person standing in front of a whiteboard or sitting on a beach with a laptop telling you they've cracked the code. And for a second, you actually feel hopeful. Like, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how I finally get out. Your anxiety drops for just a moment as you imagine quitting your job, traveling, paying off debt. And then 3 months later, you're dodging the course complete. 8% email reminder and pretending that $497 never left your bank account. The anxiety is back. The guilt is louder. And now you're not just broke. You feel like you've failed at fixing your life too. Sound familiar? Here's the part nobody really talks about. The online course trap isn't just about wasting money. It's about what it does to your identity, your confidence, and the way your brain starts relating to money and hope itself. And if you don't understand that psychology, you can blow thousands of dollars trying to level up and actually end up more stuck than when you started. My name is Neo, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, especially the weird psychological traps we fall into when we're just trying to improve our lives. If you're someone who wants to actually get results from the money you invest in yourself instead of building a digital graveyard of half-finished programs, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up giving you a few uncomfortable "oh wow, that's me" moments and some real breathing room on the other side. Most financial gurus will tell you, invest in yourself. Courses are assets. The best investment is in your education. And, like in theory, sure, education is powerful. Warren Buffett says it, so it must be right? The conventional wisdom says that if you aren't where you want to be financially, it's because you lack information. You just don't know the secret to dropshipping, or the secret to options trading, or the secret to copywriting. Most people think the equation is simple. Buy course, gain knowledge, make more money happily ever after. They think, if I'm not rich yet, I just haven't bought the right course, joined the right mastermind, or found the right mentor. But here's the thing they're missing. You're not a broken machine that just needs the right software update. You're a human being with a nervous system, emotional wounds, attention limits, habits, fears, and a history with money. And those things don't instantly change just because you swiped your card. The course creation industry isn't really in the education business. They're in the hope business. They're selling you the fantasy of who you could become, wrapped in the language of passive income and lifestyle freedom. Here's my core thesis, and I want you to really sit with this. The real danger of the online course trap isn't wasting money on content you don't use. It's repeatedly engaging in what I call identity rental, where you pay to temporarily feel like the type of person who is successful without having to suffer through the actual process of becoming one. Psychologically, that's brutal, because your brain starts associating the purchase with progress. You get a dopamine hit at checkout. You feel like a future successful version of yourself for a minute. Research in neuroscience literally shows that the brain releases more dopamine during the anticipation of a reward than during the receipt of it. So the moment you commit to buying the course, your brain gives you a massive hit of dopamine because it simulates the feeling of having already solved the problem. Think about that for a second. By spending the money, your subconscious mind ticks a box that says, problem solved. We are now a person who knows how to trade stocks. You get the emotional payoff of success before you've watched a single minute of video. And because you've already got the reward, the relief, the excitement, the identity shift, your motivation to actually do the hard, boring work evaporates. This connects to a psychological concept called symbolic self-completion theory. When we feel incomplete in a certain area, like feeling financially inadequate, we seek out symbols that define us as complete. The course becomes the symbol. Owning it makes you feel like you've arrived, even though nothing in your actual life has changed. That's the turning point where you mistake the symbol of success for success itself. When you don't have that awareness, your brain operates in what I call survival, disguised as self-improvement mode. You feel stuck in your job, underpaid, maybe a bit embarrassed about where you're at. Courses start to feel like lifeboats. Here's what's actually happening. Under financial stress, your brain's amygdala, the fear center, lights up. The American Psychological Association has consistently found that money is the top source of stress for most adults. When that's the case, your brain is constantly scanning for exits. Anything that says this will be your way out gets amplified. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term planning and rational decision-making, literally gets suppressed. So when a course says go from 0 to 10K/month in 90 days, your rational brain might roll its eyes, but your survival brain is like, we have to try this. We can't stay here. The course promise offers psychological relief. For a few minutes, your anxiety drops. You feel possibility. That relief is so strong that your brain learns, considering this course stark less anxiety. Let me give you an example. Say you hate your job and you're carrying some debt that keeps you up at night. You see a course on learn high-ticket sales. Close 5K deals, no experience needed. Your survival brain runs the math. If this works, $600 turns into $5,000. That's 8x. Keeping it in savings feels like wasting an opportunity. So you buy it. But here's the punchline. You didn't actually buy a course. You bought a temporary reduction in anxiety. Once it wears off and you haven't changed your life in 2 weeks, now you feel worse. Still stressed. Plus guilty. Plus ashamed. You're not making a rational investment decision. You're making an emergency bet dressed up as self-improvement. Now let's talk about identity, because this is where the real psychological shift either happens or doesn't. When you invest in something and follow through, your identity shifts. You go from someone who wants to learn coding to someone who is learning coding to eventually I'm a developer. That identity shift changes how you talk, what you notice, how you spend your evenings. But when you stack up unfinished courses, your identity shifts in the opposite direction. Quietly, subtly. You start to think, I'm someone who never finishes. I'm someone who always falls off. Research in psychology shows that we act in ways that confirm our self-image. If deep down you now see yourself as the type of person who doesn't follow through, your brain will literally look for evidence to support that. Picture this. You buy a $997 business course. Week 1, you're hyped. Week 2, life happens. Week 3, you start telling yourself, I'll restart when I have a free weekend. By week 6, you're avoiding even opening your laptop because the course icon feels like a judgmental roommate. Before that course, you might have thought, if I just had the right information, I'd be unstoppable. After that course, you might feel like, even with the right information, I don't do anything. That's not just a wasted purchase, it's an identity downgrade. Here's where it gets interesting. The most expensive part of a course isn't the price. It's the story you tell yourself if you don't finish it. Let's move into decision making, because this is where your brain quietly switches from survival mode to growth mode, or gets stuck bouncing between the two. When your money situation is tight and your identity is shaky, your decisions are short-term, emotional, and often desperate. You're more likely to chase shortcuts than strategies. There's a well-known study from psychologists Mullainathan and Shafir showing that financial scarcity literally reduces mental bandwidth. People perform worse on cognitive tasks when they're under money stress. When you're in that state, long-term planning feels almost impossible. So what do? You reach for things that promise fast results with minimal effort. You're not lazy, your brain just doesn't have the capacity for slow, boring compound growth when it feels like the house is on fire. Think about the last time you made a major purchase when you were stressed versus when you were calm. The decisions are completely different, right? Same principle here. Once you start operating from growth mode instead, more stable, more honest about your capacity, your decisions change. You start asking, will I realistically complete this with the life I have right now? Instead of, could this possibly be my escape? Now, let's talk about opportunity recognition, because this is one of the weirdest psychological shifts that happens. Before you have real skills or follow through under your belt, everything looks like an opportunity. Crypto course? Opportunity. Amazon FBA? Opportunity. Day trading? Opportunity. Your brain is like a kid in a candy store. Everything looks like it might be the thing. But when everything is an opportunity, nothing is. You spread your time, attention, and money over 5 different directions, making 2% progress in each. Research by the Federal Reserve and Vanguard shows a consistent theme: consistency over time, not intensity in bursts, leads to meaningful results, whether it's investing or skills. Mini story. I had a friend who bought courses on freelancing, crypto, Amazon, and short-form video. None made him money. When he finally picked one, freelance copywriting, and did nothing but that for a year, something weird happened. He didn't even buy another course. He just revisited one he already had and actually implemented it. 6 months later, the opportunities weren't course sales pages. They were real clients, referrals, and skill stacks. Real opportunities show up after you build identity and skill, not before. Courses don't create opportunity. They amplify the opportunities your identity can actually see and act on. Let's zoom out and look at the social and career impacts, because this trap doesn't just live inside your browser history. When you're constantly hopping from one course to another, your story about yourself gets fuzzy. You might catch yourself saying, I'm getting into real estate, then 3 months later, I'm working on my trading, then I'm building a marketing agency. Socially, we crave respect. We want to be seen as someone going somewhere. So we sometimes start talking like our future self before we've built the habits of that person. Online courses make that incredibly easy. You can say I'm in a program for X and borrow a bit of borrowed prestige. But over time, if your visible results don't match your repeated pivots, people start to mentally file you under big talk, low follow through. At work, this can show up as chronic dissatisfaction without clear direction. Instead of quietly building transferable skills where you are, you mentally check out because you're about to make money elsewhere. So you stop engaging at work, your performance plateaus, and ironically, your income stagnates while you're trying to escape that very feeling. Now, let's talk about the long-term compound effects, because this is where the math and psychology collide in a pretty brutal way. If you buy just one $300 course every quarter for a year, that's $1,200 a year. Over 5 years, that's $6,000. Over 10 years, $12,000. And that's assuming you only buy 4 a year. But here's the real kicker. Let's say you took that same $1,200 a year and invested it in a boring S&P 500 index fund at an average 7% annual return. Over 10 years, you wouldn't just have saved $12,000. You'd have around $17,000 with compound interest. Over 20 years, that habit becomes nearly $50,000. Over 30 years, we're talking about roughly $120,000. Think about that. That's not just money. That's decades of breathing room. That's optionality. That's walking away money from toxic jobs. The very financial freedom you were trying to buy in the courses, you were actually destroying by buying the courses. But here's where most people mess this up. They go from courses will save me to all courses are scams. It's like an emotional pendulum swing. You get burned a few times, feel embarrassed, and then you swear off education altogether. That's mistake number 1, confusing your approach with the entire category. Mistake number 2 is thinking, well, I already wasted so much, I might as well buy this one last thing. This time I'll be serious. But you don't change your environment, schedule, or expectations. You're relying on motivation and vibes, not systems. And the third mistake? You try to make up for it by going cheaper but wider. You buy 10 mini courses instead of one deep program, telling yourself, if I get just one idea from each, it'll be worth it. But mentally, you're still playing the same game, more input, no clear execution. I want to be super clear. This isn't about shaming you. The course industry is literally designed to hit your psychological weak spots: FOMO, hope, insecurity, status. You're not dumb. You're human. So let's reframe this completely. This isn't about stop wasting money on courses. It's about becoming the type of person who uses education as a lever, not a lottery ticket. Someone whose self-worth isn't riding on whether the next program finally fixes them. Think about opportunity cost for a second. Every $500 you spend has options. It can go toward debt, an emergency fund, investing, a course, or even just buying yourself some actual rest. Culturally, we over-glorify hustle purchases and undervalue stability. We'll applaud people for dropping $2,000 on a mastermind, but call them boring for stacking 6 months of expenses. Before every course purchase, ask, what is this money not doing for me if I send it here? The Federal Reserve found that about 37% of adults would struggle to cover a $400 emergency in cash. That means a single $397 high-income skills course is literally the difference between calm and panic for a lot of people. The reframe is, I invest in learning, but only when my identity, time, and systems are ready to turn that learning into reality. You're not the person frantically buying escape hatches. You're the person calmly selecting tools to climb a ladder you've already chosen. Let's do a compassionate reality check with some math. Say you've bought an average of 2 $500 courses a year for the last 3 years. That's $3,000. If instead you had taken just half of that, $1,500, and thrown it at a credit card balance at 20% APR, you'd have saved hundreds in interest alone. Or imagine you took that $3,000 and built a small emergency fund. Having $1,000, $2,000 in savings instantly moves you out of constant panic mode. Your nervous system gets calmer, decisions shift, you're not trying to escape as much, so you're less vulnerable to this one course will save you marketing. Compare that to buying one $1,000, $1,500 course every couple of years that you actually finish and implement. Even if it only helps you earn an extra $200/month after a year of work, that's $2,400 year in real, recurring income. The numbers flip from cost to ROI, but only if the identity and follow-through are in place. So where does this leave you? The core message is this. The online course trap is not that courses are bad. It's that when you're anxious, under financial pressure, and uncertain about who you are, it's very easy to use courses as emotional band-aids instead of tools for real change. Your turning point is not the next checkout page. It's the moment you decide, I'm done buying escape routes. From now on, I buy alignment. Alignment with your current season of life, your available time, your real priorities, and the identity you're actively building, not the fantasy one you use to avoid where you're at. Realistic expectation time. This isn't about never making a bad purchase again. The goal is not perfection, it's pattern change. It's going from 5 impulsive buys a year to 1 or 2 intentional ones that you actually integrate into your life. Imagine your future self a few years from now. They're not drowning in login details and abandoned modules. There's someone who can say, yeah, I picked this lane, I built this skill, I stuck with it. Their confidence doesn't come from how many programs they're in. It comes from the fact that when they say, I'm working on this, it actually shows up in their calendar. You can start becoming that person today. Not by buying anything, but by making one decision. From now on, my money doesn't just buy me hope. It funds my identity shift. So next time you're staring at an Enroll Now button, ask yourself, am I buying a fantasy, or am I equipping the person I'm actually becoming? You know the answer, and whichever way you choose, own it, because that's where your real power with money begins.